Welcome everybody to Festivals Helping Festivals, a offshoot of Tuesday Talks with FEO. I'm joined with Marnie Lapierre, who brings her wisdom, experience, and need to learn from all of you. Again, this is just a roundtable discussion that we're going to have to talk about grants and sponsorships. So we can you know what I want to, Marnie and I do want to start with, we have not heard anything from Reconnect. Reconnect is still waiting for, I guess, for all the changes in government that are happening, the new minister, et cetera. So once we know, we will certainly send an email out so that you will all know what the announcement is and who has received everything. So, you know, our CEO Dave is in touch with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, Sport, and on a weekly, daily basis sometimes. So he's pushing for it, and we're just all have to sadly be patient and wait to hear, because I know we're right into the season and it kind of stings a bit. So, well, I shouldn't say that. Edit that out, Jay. So we know that you're looking for the money. So, all right. Well, welcome. If your name isn't already, if your company name is not already on your profile, can you please add that so that we know who we're talking to? Okay. Let's go. What questions? Marnie, we had a couple of things that we were going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm just kind of flipping back to before we actually started, and we were discussing with a few here. I started into this industry as a volunteer, and it made me, and while we were sitting here getting things rocking and rolling, it made me realize that a lot of people start this way, and we don't necessarily come into it with sponsorship and grant application experience. And I am so appreciative of FEO having helped guide me along over the last 8 years learning this process, because boy, they change those applications every year. And the learning curve has been huge. So some of you may be very new to that. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think it's going to be a train approaching us. I think it's an actual wonderful sunshine that's going to happen. And there are so many here that do have long-term experience. There are some that are actually employed in the industry. Because of all of this, I am now employed. Part of my own consulting services is doing this as well. So, there is no silly question. Don't be shy, because if we don't ask questions, we're not going to learn. One person's experience is going to be completely different from someone else's. So we need to, come together as an industry, because we are viable to each of our communities and the province as well. So let's start sharing. And is there one, other than the reconnecting, which we've already addressed, burning question that you have about funding from sponsorship to grant applications? And Catherine's off with the lead.
Unmute yourself, hon. That is going to be...
After 2 years, we think we learn.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So my screen appears to be frozen, but I guess it's my computer, so I may have to log out and log back in, but you can hear me, so that's important. So what I'm curious to find out is what people's experience have been, those that have been around the block a few times, how 2022 is different from 2019, let's just say our last big year, and what your experiences are, good and bad.
Anybody have any?
Maybe somebody who's had their event already. Has anyone already gone ahead and hosted something this year?
We just hosted the Cannabis Wiki Expo here at the Western Fair District 2 weeks ago. It went pretty well. Some of our sponsors were actually unable to make it, but it went well. I don't really know what to say about it.
Cheyenne, did you have just a question? I just would like to know, was it difficult to get sponsors this year? Or
No, it wasn't. A lot of our sponsors were pretty eager just because it was a first time running event and it's an up and coming industry. So we did have some pretty eager sponsors. However, one of our sponsors overstretched themselves and weren't able to fulfill their sponsorship.
Do you have
Okay.
contracts with people?
Yes.
I know it's tricky. So I guess I'll sort of try to do a little bit of answering my own question, but just to stimulate the conversation with regards to this. So we had a fair last year. I think we were the largest fair in Ontario. In 2021, we had about 55,000 people through.
Wow.
It was a success because we budgeted half the expenses, so therefore we did well. We also had an event called Eat and Drink Norfolk in April, which was very successful, netting us about $100,000. We had about 3,500 people through the event in 3-day nights. And then we also had a night market for the first time ever in June, which was a 2-night night market, which was okay. But these events pale in comparison to the scale and the scope of a fair that brings in 100 to 130,000 people in a year. So what I'm finding is there's just a lot of people that this is one of my takeaways is make sure you always develop more than one relationship with an organization. Let's say, for instance, it's a chartered bank or an insurance company or someone big like a Hydro One or someone like that. Because if and when they centralize, i.e. instead of having a local person here in Norfolk, I'm dealing with somebody out of London, Hamilton, Toronto, they don't know your event. You're a number, right? You're in a mix with a lot of other people. And I'm finding this year that because so many staff members, senior staff members stepped away from their roles either during COVID or post-COVID, that trying to find that person who's going to have the passion for your event and that will be your champion is very difficult because it's like playing whack-a-mole. Like you find one and then it's another and then it's another. And so that is my challenge this year is trying to figure out who to pitch to. So just a word to the wise there.
That is really good advice, especially in these times when there are so many changes between, staff working from home, staff realizing that this may not be the industry that they want to work in. So now you've lost that contact, or even the company's own change of what their priorities are with their marketing dollars. Because when it comes down to sponsorship, that's what you're asking for is their marketing dollars and how it can reflect their commitment to the community, right? So it's a whole new renegotiation of relationships within that sponsorship portal that we're all trying to access those dollars.
Agreed.
I led an event in safety web meeting a couple of weeks back, and I was encouraging everybody to dust off those process binders because everything has changed because of, pandemic issues and people's health issues and all the rest of it. And, we also have to look at that sponsorship binder that we have always used as our Bible to go after that revenue. And we changed Debbie and I changed the order of the presentations that we're going to be doing monthly because sponsorship and grants was going to be further down into the year. And with all the changes that are happening, we realize now that we have to start approaching those past sponsors and potential new sponsors earlier to get on their schedule for their budgeting for 2023. 2022, they've already budgeted, they've already decided where they're going to put it. You might catch some residual dollars later in the fall, but you want to be present of mind when, end of November hits and they start looking at that budget for 2023. So you want to start having those discussions now and branching out, bringing the muffins and saying, hey, let's talk sponsorship dollars, or however it is that you negotiate your sponsorships with the corporate industry or individuals even. And that that changes on a daily basis, whether you're dealing with somebody who's a very small business person to a major corporation, depending on how you're going after it. And that's the thing. One of the questions I had is what's working for these events here in Ontario? Is it, are you doing it yourself as an organization? Like you have a person dedicated within your committee makeup, or are you hiring outside, or are you finding that you need use of experts? That's going to be my little question follow up. But I also see we have two hands up, and I don't know who went up first, so I'm going to go with Adriana alphabetically. Adriana, what do you have?
So Thamesville, like Catherine had said, a lot of these people within the organizations and the committees are all new. So Thamesville started this year with a completely new committee. So I knew a few people that were on it, so I joined them. I took a lot of my experience from volunteering and working with Connie with Retrofest and other organizations to help them. We actually saw an increase in our sponsorship by over 10,000. So that was really nice. And a lot of these sponsors were small town families and stuff like this, rather than our big businesses. So which was really nice. It was very small town businesses, which they always is nice. They had a lot of new sponsorships and new organizations that sponsored and participated this year. So it was really nice. I would say one of the downfalls was just getting out there with a lot of these organizations still having COVID restrictions, getting the letters or the emails out. That group had to quickly change and work on their feet to change how they go about getting sponsors, because they're used to the old-fashioned written letters that you go and hand out. With a lot of these groups and businesses now, they're still in COVID restrictions, so they had to quickly change how they did things, but they did pretty well for a brand new committee, so I was pretty proud.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. It's true. It is a bit of a struggle finding the right way to do the approach, because again, like you say, some could be working at home. Some are not opening the doors to their business for walk-ins. They're just there operating, and making those new connections, that can definitely make it a little bit of a challenge. Julia.
Hello, that's me.
That's you.
So I kind of just want to touch upon, I think you asked earlier, the biggest difference that we noticed from 2019 into now. Definitely what Catherine mentioned, we've noticed a lot more of our, funding comes more from from granting versus sponsorships. Before, I would say VFF was probably almost 90% sponsorship dollars, and ever since the pandemic, obviously, as Catherine mentioned, a lot of shifting of senior positions, and it's kind of hard to, get people who, let's say, who's been a sponsor for the past 3 years. If everyone's completely new, you have to really convince the whole team again to, want to sponsor and come out to the organization. So I'd say even more than half, maybe 80% now of the festival is definitely granting dollars. And I guess also one of the other biggest setbacks we had. So we just had our festival actually about 2 weeks ago. We made it. We did it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. One of the setbacks, I guess, for us is usually our festival is in May, but because of the lockdown that happened December, January, we actually ended up pushing the extra month because we needed that extra time for sponsorship to kind of again, to poach new people, to kind of realize that a lot of the bigger sponsors that we've signed on before, especially ones who would be multiple years, they all pulled out pretty last minute. So it's up to us to kind of scramble around and find out where we can make up that discrepancy of dollars. But the good thing is we've had the time, obviously, to look more into granting. Granting was never an option that we ever really looked at, and because we've had more time, and I guess part of my position as well is to solely look at granting. So we've had more time to carve that out. And I think that's why we've noticed that we've been able to grow the festival more with granting dollars versus just sponsorship dollars. When they were going strictly to just 1 week of the festival, with granting, we can do a lot more. We have ongoing programming now. So that's definitely one beneficial thing that came out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Catherine.
I was just going to say that this year I have one person in the office working with me that's sort of taking care of sponsors that are $1,000 or less. She used to be involved with one of the banks that we deal with here in town, so she knows a lot of people, and she's very sort of customer service facing, so she is great on the phone. I wrote her sort of a loosey-goosey script that she could go by. So she's helped me a lot. She's probably brought in close to $10,000 in sponsorship in the last 5 weeks, 4 weeks. So that's great because I have about 250 sponsors to manage, and I'm going to say maybe 75, 80 of them are 1,000 and under, and I just don't have time to give them the time and attention that they should have. So I've been tackling, I start, our events ends on Thanksgiving Monday, and I start, I take a breather after for a couple of days, and then I start doing my fulfillment reports. And then that's when I'm asking for the money for 2023. If I haven't already got a 1, 2, 3 multiple year deal with them. The other thing that I did this year is I have about 3 or 4 people outside of the fair office that are, one might be the horse committee person, one might be the tractor pull committee person, etc. And they are also helping me to secure sponsors, even new sponsors, because again, it's I'm basically one person, plus I have an administrative person that does my invoicing, and it's just crazy to try to do it all. So, I've really lobbying my organization hard for them to hire someone to be a development assistant for me, because I think I can grow the sponsorship easily from, say, we might get like 350,000 in cash and 150,000 in kind, and then maybe about 200,000 or so a year in grant. And I think that we're leaving a lot of money on the table because we don't have the right people asking the right way. So my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, and definitely. And if the question isn't even being asked yet, because there hasn't been that dedicated person or that dedicated time to make that ask, it could be just sitting there waiting for us, right?
So I had to step away for a minute, and the information is amazing. Have any of you stepped outside? And I see Lori waiting to speak, but and we'll go there in a minute. But have you stepped outside the normal, who you would normally approach? Like, have you gone to? Because I remember Judy Haber is somebody who has come on many times and been on our Tuesday talks. And she talks about not only grocery stores, but construction companies and all, I mean, here in KW, and Lori will probably talk to this a bit, construction's going on everywhere. So, are you thinking outside of your norm on that as well? Lori, why don't you take it? You're nodding, so why don't you go for it? Hi.
That's what I'm hearing from those folks. I would say one of the things I've noticed is a little bit of a shift in what's motivating the sponsors, what's driving them into the community, which is where we always start. We position the sponsorships, some of them think of it as a donation, and we try to position it as what is the goal you're trying to achieve or the problem you're trying to solve with the sponsorship, because that, always helps to anchor the dollars a little bit more in their business, as opposed to that, feeling good kind of motivation. And what we're hearing a lot more is back to just good old-fashioned brand recognition. I want my logo as big as I can get it. And the other one is hosting. They've got employees who haven't been together in 2 years. They've got clients that they haven't seen face-to-face in 2 years. So we're hearing a lot more of them are looking for ways to bring their own people together within the festival. And that's so much more impactful when they can also point at their logo on the sign or on a stage or somewhere. But to your point about Judy's insights around the construction industry and things like that, one of the things that we've changed is depending on who we're talking to and what sense we have of how well they've done in the past year or two, we don't offer the small packages to certain companies anymore. It's this level, or we'll see you next year. It's if we know that they've, come through quite well and they've got, an impact that they're trying to create, then we go at them for the big stuff right off the top instead of, you know, with others, maybe some smaller companies or some companies that have been with us for a long time that have been really hard hit. We're trying to find ways to give them as much as we can for as little as possible, just to keep the relationship going until they've fully recovered. But, you know, the developers is a great example. They did great. They're slowing down now. But so, you know, those are the folks who can afford to, you know, keep the lights turned on.
So for all of you, sorry, I'm just jumping in there, Marnie. Did you find the shift in thinking on how you were approaching have to change? Like the shift in sponsorship, how you were offering sponsorship, who you were offering it to? Did you have to shift? Because when Lori said we're going to certain people for bigger packages, was that a hard thought process and shift to make for you? And was it successful? Yeah, Lori?
I can just say, like, an approach we would have taken maybe in the past would have been, here's, you know, 15 things that you can choose from. And now we're going out with, like, here's 3 things that we think fit you. Tell me what, you know, and that's it. That's all we're going to talk about today. So that's been a little bit of a shift.
Okay.
And usually one of them is something I don't think they'll like.
So instead of offering them like a full rate card, you narrowed the rate card down to, okay, that's great. Thanks.
Good.
Luca.
Thanks, Debbie. You know, I think from my perspective, I've always approached sponsorship from a sort of a different lens than going to brands with a pre-packaged gold, silver, bronze, generalized kind of like deck. You know, our view on selling any brands or partnerships into the festivals and events that we run is more about better understanding their wants out of the festival and then creating a customized package and pricing accordingly. So, you know, that, you know, the package may be more than what they anticipated spending, but at the same time, it's delivering against more of the boxes that they have to check internally. I think, you know, the more time we spend in customizing our approach to each client and a better understanding through conversation their needs and wants out of, you know, what their relationship is with the festival or event, I think is going to deliver us a better overall you know, result in terms of the long-term relationship development with the festivals and events, but also you know, increase the cash flow for the sponsorship side of things. And I think ultimately, the more we do to better understand the client's needs and wants and why they're even having the conversation, because I know we've all made calls and had meetings where it's just like, well, this isn't going to go anywhere. But the ones that are actually, you know, interested in having that conversation and want to be a part of it, the better we understand their business, the better we'll be able to deliver something that's going to have a win for everybody.
That's great. Thank you. Tina says, I would have to agree with all the speakers, Marnie, with dusting off the old toolkits, playbooks, and starting from scratch. We're all forced to rebuild relationships and start from the beginning, which, to add to Lori's point, this gives us an opportunity to bring up our levels where our sponsorships are stuck in lower rate for years. Great comments. Thanks, Tina.
I'll add a little bit to my own experience from this year. I took on the role of the chair for the Timmins Multicultural Festival, which is the longest running festival in our community. And it really needed some dusting up because they've always done it that way. So I took a look at what their sponsorship package was, and it was severely lacking simply because they have the previous committees had very good intentions of being supportive within the community, and that is great, but it needed the boost. And so I took what I've learned from this wonderful organization and the many workshops that I was able to attend and past experience with other events, and created a new sponsorship package where what I call our heavy hitters in the community negotiated a multi-year agreement so that we could prove a fiscal viability to any grant opportunities, to create that, you know, for lack of a better term, the fear of missing out with other sponsorship opportunities where so-and-so is supporting us. We'd like to have your name right there beside them kind of deal. And it being a small community, you know, there's always that little competitive edge, which worked really well for us for this year. We know that going forward, it's going to make our planning better. We also were able to reevaluate and renew those relationships that before had been a phone call or letter weeks before the event. Now there is an ongoing relationship where the programming that we're now implementing throughout the year is going to reflect back on our festival supporters so that their name will be also affiliated with the event going forward. And this is just a little thing of what I've brought in to boost this little festival, to see that it makes it to the 60th year, where hopefully I can pass the torch, if not before, to somebody, you know, as attached to the event as I am. But anyways, it's definitely, this is the time to start looking at new relationships and, you know, reevaluating the older relationships and what they can bring to the table. And, you know, with the amount of setbacks that have happened in the province over the last 2 years, there is still that need for that community involvement, that advertising dollar that can be delegated towards a sponsorship of an event, because we know as festivals and events, our advertising for our event goes much beyond the border of our community. So we're taking their name with it. I kind of spun out there a little bit, but you can see where I'm going, where it's that focus on what that package is right now, what you offer, and listening to the sponsor of what they need and working together to find that mutual ground to support the event and their needs at the same time.
Lori.
One thing we found to build on your point is we're not just, you know, walking away from we get to say it with a German accent, this is the way we've always done it. But not just doing that with the sponsorship packages, but also with the programming itself, which is opening doors to new partners and opening doors to new ways of doing business with partners. So looking at what we were doing pre-pandemic and letting COVID take the blame for not bringing back some things that were poor performing or underperforming, and focusing on things that were working, and then taking the opportunity to refresh and change things up and bring things back in new ways that are really, when you start looking at even your programming through a new lens, it broadens your thinking on who could be attached to that programming from a partner perspective as well.
Yep, very good point. Very good point.
So Sue asked, is anyone playing with hybrid in their festivals? And let's say just playing with interaction, gamification, et cetera, and tapping into the virtual value with that. So Pat, that's a great question. And I don't know how, but Pat said she got some sponsors on that. Pat, do you want to share on that?
Sure. Well, so what we did last year, the last 2 years, was entirely hybrid. It was entirely virtual. This year we're hybrid. But when we were virtual, we went to the sponsors who had given us any significant amount of money, not $200, but any real money, and said, if you produce a commercial, we'll run it. And so the biggest sponsors had commercials on pretty much every event, and it on a declining basis. So if you gave us less money, you got fewer commercials, but you still got them. So that was a value we could add. And especially since our online festival was seen in multiple countries, this year we know we were seen in 11 countries. That gave a greater value to sponsors. So this year we were both online and in person, but we didn't do as much with the commercials for the online because there was so much in person that we gave them a lot of value in person. But the other thing we do is we give them ads in our newsletter. So if you're a sponsor already and you want to tell somebody about something you're doing, you have a free ad in our newsletter, which goes to a couple of thousand people on a regular basis. If you're not already a sponsor and you want to put in an ad, we charge you $250.
Wonderful. Thank you. And how did you, so you said you didn't really, so I'm backing up here. You did hybrid or you didn't?
Sarah, this is my not beautiful hair. That's why I don't want to be on screen. We were hybrid this year. Yes, we had. Okay. We did a business series that was online. We did one day of workshops online, and one collegiate showcase that was through our YouTube channel. So there was some online component for those who wanted to see us from other countries or other cities, and then the rest of it was live. We had, and also our 4 days of outdoor concerts. Our festival's 11 days. Our 4 days of outdoor concerts were live streamed. So that was also an opportunity for the sponsors to get something on the live stream, because we always credited our sponsors, when people are introducing the show, thank you to our sponsors especially. And again, the larger sponsors get the most recognition from those MCs.
And did you find that, so I know I'm veering away a bit from grants and sponsorships, but did you get a good response, Pat?
From the sponsors?
No, from attendance and from your hybrid or when you live streamed.
The live stream was a little disappointing because we were live streamed last summer. So we are a festival that takes place in May and June for 11 days. And then we partnered with Ontario Place and produced a summer festival for a month last summer. They wanted something, we had something to offer. So we partnered with Ontario Place and Toronto Undergraduate Jazz to do 4 weeks of programming at Ontario Place last summer. And that was live streamed because we had a very limited audience because of COVID. We could only seat, I think, 200 people, and they had to reserve. And the live stream got a lot of views. That was last summer. This summer, we live streamed during our festival, and not so many people were watching. I think people are out and about, and thank goodness it wasn't a day like today, which is raining, but it was beautiful weather for the two weekends. So we had people coming, and I think there was also a sense of comfort with being outdoors because it wasn't like a packed kind of crowd, that people felt more comfortable going to something live because it was outside. So the live stream got people, but not as many this year. And this summer we are starting July the 8th, we'll be back at Ontario Place for 8 weeks, but we're not live streaming because we decided that it wasn't worth the investment. It's expensive. And if we don't have the numbers watching, then we're just not going to do it.
And did you charge for live streaming? Or is that just logging onto, so it's just logging into your Facebook or your YouTube channel and watching it, right?
Yeah. We viewed live streaming as a way to promote what we're doing. So I think you can charge for live streaming if you have an artist that the people really want to see. We have great performers, but unless we have Take Six coming, and they're the most awarded vocal group in history. They're coming on the 28th of July. If we chose to live stream that, we could charge for it. It's a balance because we're going to have to pay the live stream crew a couple of $1,000s. Do we think people will sit at their homes on July the 28th, if it's a nice night, and pay us enough money to cover that live stream cost? And we don't think so.
Okay. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah.
Dave, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, and I apologize. I got on late because of connectivity problems, but and I see Lori has a point here, and I'm hearing it a lot through everybody I'm talking to about that virtual and hybrid. People just aren't into that, and I think we've all sort of experienced that over the COVID period, that you'd get peaks of interest, and it was important to stay in front of people, but that real buy-in and getting people to pay for the service, taking out of account artist rights and everything like that, with some of the major acts, if you're going to try to stream them, there's certain contractual obligations that are going to cause you problems down the road. But that interest is really waning, and I'm hearing it a lot, and I know others are as well. My question to a lot of you is, are you hearing nervousness from major clients, and I'm talking like $10,000 or higher, about what's going to happen. With everything going on in the States and in the news cycle, COVID has sort of taken a back seat, but it's really percolating under the surface there and starting to get to some dangerous levels again. And I'm wondering if it's being communicated back to you that, as much as sponsors would like to get back in the game and be a part of the community, that there is a nervousness out there still.
Catherine?
Hi, Dave. To answer your question, no. Because we were able to have an event last October, we've already had like one COVID event, if you will, live. Well, we've had 3 COVID events live, but our big one was live. What we're finding is the opposite. What we're finding is that people are just so excited to be going to have the sights and smells and sounds, and we've experienced less people complaining. So like even for our fair that we had, where we had 55,000 people last year, our other events that we had in the winter, where you'd normally get those sponsors going, I don't like this there, I don't like that, I don't like that, or attendees saying, why don't you have this or that? People were just like, we're so glad that you're having this event. We're so glad we have somewhere to go. I still think that we're into that sort of a zeitgeist where people are just so freaking happy to be out and having fun and seeing people. So from my larger sponsors, so my multi-year title sponsors, my multi-year grand champion sponsors, they're all very excited and gung-ho.
Thanks, Catherine. Lori, what about you?
We're hearing a little bit of caution coming from sponsors, but not in relation to COVID. Similar to what you were saying, Catherine, the toothpaste is out of the tube as far as a lot of people are concerned, and they're just, COVID is kind of this thing that's sort of done for a lot of people. What we're hearing is more about the economy. Are we going to be able to keep all of our staff? Our sales of our product going to start to slow down because household spending is buttoning down? It's more around the state of the impending recession.
Thank you. Thanks. So is there anything else on that you want? Because I want to go back to Catherine again about the chatting you've been doing. Doing this allows us to obtain marketing dollars and advertising. So on the hybrid.
Sure. So that was a sort of a 2-part question. So we are not doing hybrid, but you mentioned, are you doing, what was the question that you asked? We are tapping into not just marketing dollars for advertising. So I'll give you, for example, so one of the sponsors that we work with has been like a $10,000 sponsor for years. And I asked him to step up this year in a large way. And before the meeting, we have a new general manager, I should say. Her name is Angela Hogeveen, and she comes from the Honda Indy North America circuit. So she's just not a general manager with all the, all the other skills and abilities that she should have as a GM, but she's pretty brilliant when it comes to marketing. And I'm 60 years old this year. She knows stuff I've never even heard of and thought of. So she's in her 30s. I'm turning 60 this year, between the two of us. So what she's able to do is, so for instance, if you are an insurance company, let's say, and your number one pain that you tell us, or the number one thing that you want to gain from sponsorship with us, is you want to get qualified leads, let's just say, for a case of, for argument's sake. So she has an ability in a way to sort of embed links, and I'm not even going to use the right words because I don't know them, but what she's able to do is, rather than just say, oh, we'll run a contest for you, or we'll do, like share contests, or do Instagram, Snapchat, whatever their age bracket is that they're wanting to attract. We'll do those contesting for you. They're like, well, that's okay. That's marketing. But to get into the advertising, they actually need to get email addresses, names, phone numbers, etc. So she has a way to do that I was not aware of. So we pitched it to them, and all of a sudden their pockets loosened up greatly. So does that make sense to any of the younger people that know what I'm talking about? It's like, activating through like links and links that go directly to them.
Okay. Wow.
I like it.
Excellent.
I can barely describe it. But we did it.
Yay.
I like
Is there anything else that you guys want? Marnie, is there anything, comments, anything from that? Or
Let me see. We have here. So Pat had mentioned that her online business workshops were the best attended. This is in the chat, and they were not getting pushback from sponsors about COVID. However, some sponsors were redirecting their philanthropy to COVID support. And Julia, who said she agrees with Pat, and that they've seen that more focus on the COVID/health support. And, you know, that is something to take into consideration. Is there a way to facilitate that into your own programming? Because we know we've had to make adjustments at the events for COVID. You know, people still want to feel safe going to your event. How can that translate into a sponsorship? How can we circle that back so that, you know, the entity is showing support of the event as well as community concern for health? Is there a way to tie that in together? You know, that's something to get the wheels turning a little bit on. You know, so there's that. I like those 2 points put together. I think that's something that we can all maybe take to the chalkboard and think about at some point. I did prepare today a list, and I'm not sure if it's able to be shared, but it'll be sent out of the various grants. There we go. And Jay got my cue. Of the various grants that on a quick search and going through a little bit of a list that Deb also provided that you can access and take a look. The Government of Canada, if you've been doing, Government of Ontario, if you've been doing grants for a little while, you know, it's changed over the years of what it looked like, where we used to have the temp and the celebrate, and then they combined it into one. At all these sites here, there are various different levels of grant applications that you can do. You can take a look at. You've probably all seen these before. They have changed. In the quick review that I did last night and this morning, they've definitely changed since 2019. And they'll probably change a bit more going forward. So it's, if you haven't started looking at these, I would say you definitely would want to start reviewing them for 2023, because I'm sure similar questions are going to be asked. I've always kept digital copies of every application I've ever made, because the same questions come up but in a different way, and what their requirements are going to be are a little bit different. Also on the document, there's other leads for accessing funds, such as the municipal accommodations tax, which pretty much every community in Ontario has now that you can access. This is the actual laws and regulation. To find out who is responsible for issuing that in your community, you would want to reach out to your municipal offices in whatever form that they appear as. I know in Timmins, the Economic Development Corporation is the one that's spearheading it. And they have two committees. One is for the municipal side of things. The other is for the grants to organizations, if you will. And then one that popped up for corporate sponsorship leads was charityvillage.com. I hadn't reviewed that in a very long time. I'd looked at it a few years ago, but there are some new corporate funding programs, and a couple of them even addressed the pandemic issue, you know, of how they would support your event through that. So it, you know, takes a little bit of reading, but it is there. And a quick list of FEO members who are sponsorship consultants that if you have further questions to definitely reach out to. Their websites are there with all their contact information. These are people that are well versed and have kept very current on the trends as to what's happening in sponsorship and have some fantastic ideas. A couple of them, such as Chris Bayless and Judy Haber, I've actually sat in on their workshops through the FEO conference and came away with a billion different ideas of how to get things rolling. I've never not had a conversation with any of these individuals and not learned something. So definitely well worth your time to take a look at. And so
And
that
Jay will create a link for that. And when I send out an email follow-up with the recording and everything, I'll add that link as well, so that you guys have access to that document. Just a bit of a plug here. If you're a member of FEO, you are also get a membership automatically with IFEA, International Festivals and Events Association. That also has a lot of training and webinars that they do. So just thought I'd let you know, with your paid membership, that's part of your one of your benefits that you get. So shameless plug. No, it's not shameless. It's a great plug.
and it is a great organization. They have weekly webinars and meetings and roundtables such as this for everything from sponsorship to volunteer management to event risk management. It's fantastic. And they offer different certifications as well. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any burning questions? Anything that they're wanting to share or learn about? Did I dismiss that? Luca.
I do. What's the secret to a successful Trillium application? We've put in we've had 4 different grant writers try 4 times, and we cannot crack it. I can't figure out why.
Dave, over to you.
I honestly, and it's not a dig at Trillium, but the biggest thing to being successful is knowing somebody on the committee that adjudicates. Plain and simple. For our organizations like us that are pan-provincial, we can't get in, we can't crack it because we're going through a local Kitchener office that is putting Kitchener, Waterloo region properties in front of pan-provincial things. So, the best thing is to find out who's on that adjudicating committee, having conversations with them, heads up, and as much communication locally as possible. That would be my belief. The other thing, and Lori can probably jump in on that, because when we were at Oktoberfest and redid our office, we were successful on a grant, and a big part of that success was not only telling our story and our need for the space and the improvements of the space, but how we were going to share it with the community, and how others could use that to enhance their offerings as well. And that's a big part of that whole Trillium community is sharing the resources and the capital and the ability to use and share those resources with others in the community.
And we've been successful with that model on other grants as well, saying that what you give to us, we're going to share with others, and they feel better about the investment because they think they're going to hit more organizations by giving it to you.
And the other thing I'm going to say to grants, and Lori can attest to this as well. And when I was at Oktoberfest for 5 years, we didn't apply through Celebrate or Reconnect because we wanted to focus on our business and being self-sustaining, and we were for those 5 years. Lori is a great sponsorship person. I'm going to just say that outright. I've worked with her, so I know that. And the ability to get those $100,000 sponsors and $50,000 sponsors, it's hard work and it's tough work. But to get $5,000-$10,000 sponsors, or $10,000 sponsors, it's more work, but you're going to see the money at the end of the day. So, be realistic in your asks, and the other thing, and I don't know what time and getting together is like these days, but going out on that initial meeting or even reconnecting with old clients and hearing their stories directly without putting a package in front of them you might have a sense of what they need and what they want, but hearing them feed it back to you. And I know on more than one occasion, Lori and I would get back to the office and go, we need to create an event for this company because, we don't have what they're looking for, but it's something that we've talked about, we've noodled around. Let's create that event to get those sponsor dollars and build and the capacity and go on from that. And we had great success with that as well. The other thing I would say for anybody that's not accessing Canadian Heritage, you're missing the boat. Heritage is probably the best grant program out there for putting money on your bottom line because it comes with very little conditions on doing more. Usually it's used to enhance your offerings. So, you can put another band or two on your stage. You can enhance some of your visual offerings, some of your audio and staging directives, but you can also tie in some of the things that you're already doing into that application process and cover some costs. So anybody that's really not accessing Heritage or using that program, you're missing out on dollars that are available to go right to your bottom line without doing a lot of new programming and a lot of risk taking. I know they've capped the ceiling on some of those events that used to be about 120,000, and I think now it's down to probably about 95, 98,000. Not guaranteed, but that's typical for some of the major things that were coming out of there. So anybody that's not using it, I would highly recommend that you get in touch with either your local MP or directly with Heritage and talk about that program and how it might help your festival.
Great, Dave. Thank you. Luca, you have something?
I was just actually going to ask if anybody had heard around Reconnect grants or Factor grants in terms of timing, and whether or not, obviously, understanding that there's a new cabinet, and all with the recent election, whether or not any timing around grants and approvals would sort of be sort of announced.
Well, I'll just jump in. We and Dave can add to it. Dave is in contact with the ministry on a daily basis sometimes. So it's just a matter of waiting for the new cabinet to get its feet kind of wet in our industry and before they announce it. Dave, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I'm in contact with Deb Jewell probably every couple of days, just sort of hounding on everybody's behalf because I know we're getting, I spend probably half of my day just answering, no, we haven't heard yet. You'll be the first to know once we do. But unfortunately, the process, while we might not think it's political, it is a political process. We've got a new minister and a new locale. If McLeod had been back in as minister, we may have had an announcement already because apparently they had the announcements and everything all set prior to the election call, and it was just a matter of the announcements. Now that we've got a new minister from a new locale, there's probably going to be an overview and political spin put on it. Some things might change. So, I've sent a note to the new minister and the deputy minister yesterday stressing the importance of these announcements. And, I've let them know that more than a few have canceled their events because they haven't heard and they can't afford to take the chances. So, I have met with the Reconnect team on the importance of getting this program back on track, making the application process easier, making it online, getting it out to members sooner, and certainly getting back to that announcement at the end of February, beginning of March, like it used to be. I think it's paramount to all of us moving forward and growing and building our festivals, especially if they want us to market and grow our festivals and bring people into our communities from 40 and 60 kilometers away. It takes time to do that. And with the last few years and the way those programs have been managed, COVID aside, it's been next to impossible to build those timeframes and marketing plans to bring people in when you don't know if you're getting the funding or not. So it's a daily, my hair was black, I think, in December. I don't know if it's ever going to go back, but.
And one other thing I was just going to ask, just from a perspective of the group as a whole, in my experience right now, it feels like that corporate confidence is definitely outpacing consumer confidence. And I'm curious if you guys have seen sort of a lack of overall ticket sales, or sort of more of a last minute ticket sale push than we have seen in the past. And for us, Toronto's Festival of Beer, it's interesting. We're lucky being, this is our 27th year. We've got a very hardy fan base that sort of has been coming to the festival for a very long time. But even we're noticing that it's actually a little slower pace in terms of ticket sales than we have been in the past. But the consumer confidence is sort of just sort of curious whether or not they're sort of sitting there trying to wait till the last minute versus the sponsors who are a little bit more eager to get involved this year in terms of their dollars. But it seems like the consumer side of it seems a little slower than usual for us.
And unfortunately, in the events world, that's one of the things that we're all always faced with, right? I mean, events tend to be a last minute decision in a lot of cases. If you've got major artists and stuff attached to concert announcements, and you might have a little bit better response, but typically the event decision is a last minute decision that, we go on past practice and history and take those chances knowing that the doors are going to open. And I think that we're seeing even more and more of that these days, where people are just waiting to, not only decide on weather and everything else, but, just see what other people are doing and what's coming up and going in. So I think it's something that we're going to have to deal with going on, and it's probably going to get worse than it was before, my opinion.
I think it'd be a good idea to take a look too at where your ticket sales are coming from. Definitely that your local community will be more supportive than someone who may be traveling and has to gauge in right now for the situation that we're all in is gauge the risk of the travel. Some people are comfortable, like this person who's traveling to Toronto this coming weekend to see Roger Waters all the way from Timmins. I'm willing to take that risk for this once in a lifetime opportunity. When it comes to a festival, I might, and I'm not saying myself, but as someone who does travel for events, I might be a little bit more reserved as to, where I'm going and what I want to do this summer or over the course of the year with my extracurricular time, because again, we have that bit of a risk, not to mention gas prices and hotel costs.
And Marnie, that's something that we've been sharing with the Reconnect team, is that they've got to relook at that whole 40 to 60 kilometer thing. And to your point, I think it's huge that we're able to get people in our community out and engaged in what we're doing locally again, and that they should loosen some of the strings for, I think, up to 5 years to just reinvigorate our communities and get people back out and active in our own communities before we start pushing them out to other communities and stuff as well. So I'm hoping that that's something that they're gonna take seriously and really look at, because even travel and tourism, they're all working with that same thing, as we've got to get local people back out engaged and doing things.
And Destination Northern Ontario really worked hard at the programming over the last 2 years to be a backyard tourist kind of thing, to explore your community, because we've all spent the last few decades traveling outside of our communities, not realizing what's been being built up, unless of course you're in the industry and you're keenly aware of it. But it's been interesting to see the uptake on that, and if anything is indicative of that, our Canada Day event that was held locally, the Multicultural Festival, our Sportsman Show are all starting. We're seeing that willingness of people in the community coming out, people traveling to communities a little bit different.
The other thing we've shared with Reconnect on that local travel thing too, and I think Marnie, you can speak to it, Lori certainly can, is it's not just beds in hotel heads. It's, if you're doing an event in your community that's, been around for 10 years or longer, you've got certain people that use it like a homecoming, and they come back into town and they bring friends, and, you can have 10 or 15 people in your own house, but that doesn't count towards some of the metrics. And we're really encouraging that type of travel it's not only bringing people into our community, but you're probably going out to local restaurants and you're eating, and while you're in town to do Oktoberfest or something up north, you're also going out and doing some of the local attractions in the area. You're going to the kids museum, you're going to different campsites and museums in the areas, and you're really adding to that whole travel space. So it's some of the metrics that they use to measure who's coming into that, that build locally can help with.
Definitely, it's true, and even the entourages that come up with the different suppliers and booths that are coming in. You think of say, for example, your event has a marketplace, and you consider that one person. That one person isn't traveling all that distance by themselves. They're bringing some of their family members and friends to help them out. They're staying at hotels. They're eating the food. They're buying the gas. Hopefully memorabilia of the event. That to me, that's all part and parcel. That's business tourism, which adds to that dollar. Yeah. But I could go on about that all day.
I'm going to throw one more thing in here, and we've talked about it every time we do sponsorships, but for those that are attracting large numbers, is your physical space and leaving some space for that last minute experiential marketing company to come in and I want to do the Pepsi challenge, or I want to test some new gum. Those guys have deep pockets and are looking for crowds. So if you're attracting crowds and you've got good demographics, make sure that your site saves some space and that you get in touch with these experiential marketers and let them know and show them some of your past history and your numbers that, for a lot of times that last minute money is what puts you over the top and puts you in a positive position on the revenue side. So.
Very true. Very true.
I want to thank everybody for contributing today. It was a great conversation. Thank you for being part of it, for listening and learning, for contributing. I really love doing these festivals, helping festivals, and the Tuesday talks, because there's so much to learn from each other. So I want to thank you so much. We will be back again in August to do the same thing, and we'll be sending information out. The list of grants that Marnie put together, we'll get that out to you. And have a great week, everyone, and we'll have a great summer. See you in August. Thank you. Bye.